Today we're going to be solving quadratic word problems. So our general steps for this are to read the word problem and write the quadratic equation to model the situation. We're going to solve the quadratic equation by one of the methods we discussed in class, those being solving by factoring, square roots, completing the square, or quadratic formula. And then the last thing is to write a sentence to answer the question that goes with the situation. So let's take a look at the first type of question. So we're going to look at three different types today. The first type, find two consecutive even integers whose product is 288. So first we got to figure out what the heck that even means. It says two consecutive even integers. Well, that means that we need two even numbers that are right in a row. So 2 and 4 are consecutive even integers, or 8 and 10, something like that. Obviously, we know that those aren't our numbers because those don't give us a product of 288, but we need two consecutive even integers. So if we don't know either of those, the first integer would be x, and then the second consecutive even integer, if we're looking at, let's say, for example, 2 and 4, to get from 2 to 4, we would have, this is our first one, and we would have to add 2 to it to get to the second one. So we're going to take the product of x and x plus 2 because it's a consecutive even integer. And the product of those two things should equal 288. So there's our equation to solve. Now we have to choose an appropriate method. So here we would distribute. And then from here we can choose what method we want to solve. This is factorable because you're talking about integers, so there are actual numbers out there that work for this. You wouldn't get fractions or decimals. You could also choose to solve by completing the square for this as well. So this one, since we have a 1x squared, and an even b value, this is something that I'm going to choose to use completing the square for. Okay, so we would find space to add in our magic number here on both sides. And for our magic number, we have to take half of 2 and square it. Well, half of 2 is 1, and 1 squared is 1. So here we're going to add 1 to both sides. Factoring the left-hand side, we get x plus 1 squared equals 289. Next step is to take the square root on both sides. So x plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 289 is 17. And then to get x by itself, we would have to subtract 1, so negative 1 plus or minus 17 helps us give our two integers. Now we have to solve this still. So if we have negative 1 plus 17, that would give us a positive 16. If we have a negative 1 minus 17, that would give us a negative 18. Now keep in mind, 16 is just the first integer, the first even integer, so the next one wouldn't be, so if this was the case, we would say the numbers are either 16 and 18, because if 16 is the first even integer, then 18 has to be the second even integer, because a positive times a positive gives us a positive. Or if negative 18 is the first integer and we add 2 to it, negative 16 would be the other number. So there are two sets of answers to this question. Now, again, you didn't have to solve this by completing the square. You could have used quadratic formula, keeping in mind you don't get a calculator on this, so you need to be able to do that with these numbers, or to work on solving this by factoring. Okay, your choice. That's the first type of question where we're looking at consecutive integers. If it's like consecutive odd integers, think about what that would mean. Does it change anything with the situation? If it says just consecutive integers, does that change? So if it's consecutive odd, you still need x and x plus 2. If it's consecutive integers, that would be like 2 and 3. To get from 2 to 3, you would just need to add 1. So you would need x and x plus 1 for that. Alright, here's the next type of word problem. We've actually seen this type before when we looked at the garden problem earlier this unit. So a rectangular picture is 12 by 16 inches. If a frame of uniform width contains an area of 165 square inches, what is the width of the frame? Now, when it's talking about something like this, it's going to be important to draw a picture. okay, or it's at least beneficial. So we've got this picture, and it's 12 by 16 inches. And we are going to put a frame of uniform width around this, which means that on all sides it's the same width, okay? So on all sides here, all of these, it's going to be some distance x. We don't know what that is, that's what we're actually trying to find, but we know that this picture frame has an area of 165 square feet. So the way we did talk about doing these questions two different ways, but the way we talked about in class was to find the area of all of these. So there's 8 total rectangles or squares around this this picture frame for us to find the area of. So these 4 corners, the area of each of those rectangles would be x times x, or x squared. So all of those are x squareds. This rectangle on the left and this rectangle on the right are both going to have the same area. The area of one of those would be 12 times x, so that's going to be 12x, and that's going to be the same area on the right hand side as well. For the top and bottom rectangles, those have the same area. That's going to be 16 times x, or 16x, and that's also 16x there. Okay. So now we're going to combine all of this together. How many x squareds do we have? So that would be 4x squareds, plus, if we have 16 and 16x, that's 32x's. 12x and 12x makes another 24x's, and that should equal our 165. Okay, so now we're going to combine like terms. So that's going to give us 4x squared plus 56x. And I'm actually going to move the 165 over. Now, all of these questions are factorable. I will tell you that as we're going through. That's what we're focusing on. So we're going to work on factoring them. You could use completing the square, but you'd have to divide everything by 4. That's going to give you some fractions to deal with, things of that nature, kind of up to you. So 4 does not go into all 3 of those numbers, so we can't take a GCF out. So we do need to use guess and check in order to factor this question. So our possibilities of getting 4x squared are either 4x and x or 2x and 2x, so we need to keep that in mind. With 165, you obviously have a lot of different options of how to factor that. But kind of going with some of your like gut reactions of things, I wouldn't be picking 165 and 1 because that's not going to help us get 56. But the next best guess would be using 5. That's obviously going to go in, and 5 times 33 works. So if I'm going to use 5 and 33, and you could have put those in any order you wanted to, I'm going to try and figure out, do I want to put 4x and x? Well, that would give me 20, and 33 is not going to give me 56. If I change it and do 4 here, 4x and x, that would give me 5 and a number that's way bigger than 56. So I'm not going to use 4x and x. Let's try 2x and 2x. Okay, so that would give us 10 and 66. Keeping in mind that these back 2 numbers need to multiply to give us a negative, so we do need one positive and one negative. That means we need 2x plus 33 and 2x minus 5. Once it's factored, we're using the zero product property, so we're setting each of these pieces equal to 0 and solving them. So if we have 2x plus 33 equals 0, we would subtract the 33 and divide by 2 on both sides. And if we have 2x minus 5 equals 0, we would add the 5 and divide by 2. And so now we have to look at what this question is asking. It says, what is the width of the frame? Well, the width has to be a positive answer, so this one doesn't make sense, even though it is actually a solution to this. So x equals 5 halves. What the heck does that mean? So we need to say the width of the frame is 5/2 inches. So you need to put a unit with that. You could also say 2.5 or 2.5 is fine, but we should be using fractions instead of decimals for things. Okay, so that's the second type of word problem. We've seen those in the past. The third type of word problem is dealing with reciprocals. So this one says a number is increased by 4 times its reciprocal. Find the number. Okay, a number, do we have any idea what that number is? Nope. Is increased by is going to mean addition. 4 times its reciprocal. What the heck does reciprocal mean? So let's go over here for a second. If I give you 2/3, the reciprocal of 2/3 would be 3/2. So here, to get from 2/3 to 3/2, we just flip that fraction. So if x is our number, and that's over 1, to get to the reciprocal, we have to flip that and make it be 1 over x. So we're taking a number increased by 4 times its reciprocal. And I didn't put all of the stuff in here. That might help. Is 20/3. Okay, so a number increased by 4 times its reciprocal is 20/3, and you can't even see that over there either. All right, so that means that this equals 20/3. Okay, and so now we're going to have to solve this question. So we have x plus 4 times 1 over x would be 4 over x equals 20/3. Now there's a number of different ways that you can go about solving this question, but I'm going to work on getting a common denominator between these two pieces. So if I get a common denominator, that would be over x. So we would have to multiply both the numerator and denominator here by x. So that would give us x squared. This already has the common denominator of x, so x squared plus 4 over x equals 20/3. Now, this is a proportion, so that means that we can cross multiply here. Okay, so we're going to take 3 times x squared plus 4, and that would equal 20 times x, or just 20x. Distributing in, we get 3x squared plus 12 equals 20x. And then we're going to work on moving everything to the left-hand side. So 3x squared minus 20x plus 12 equals 0. And now that we're here, we're going to work on factoring this. 3, 20, 12 don't have something in common, so that means we're going to work on factoring here. If you really wanted, you could do a different method. However, it's going to give you fractions, or you're going to be dealing with fractions throughout, so just be careful with that. To get 3x squared, we need to have 3x and x. To get the 12 in the back side, we either need to use 12 and 1, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Since it's a minus plus, we know it's going to be minus minus. And so for this question, we're going to factor it into 3x minus 2 and x minus 6. That means we set each piece equal to 0. Here, solving, we would get x equals 2/3. And here, solving, we would get x equals 6. Okay, and both of these things will work as answers. So we would say the number is either 2/3 or 6. Both of those things work. If you take 2/3 and you add 4 times the reciprocal, so 4 times 3/2, you would get 20/3. And the same thing if you plugged in 6. 6 plus 4 times 1, 6 would also equal 20/3 if you worked out the math. So keep in mind, read the question, write an equation, solve it by one of our methods, and write a sentence to answer the question. That's it.